How are y'all doing? Can you hear me okay? Just in case you didn't, I'm going to ask you again. How are y'all doing, Accra? Aquaba. My name is Kieran Gaffney, or Gaff as I tend to go by, and I run Seanchoiche. A lot of you guys probably saw Seanchoiche on the running order and you didn't really know how to pronounce it. You might have pronounced it, you knew. You might have thought it was called Sean's Choice. You might have thought it was called Shaniqua. Might have thought my name was Sean. But no, the event is called Seanchoiche. And Seanchoiche is a Gaelic word. It's basically an amalgamation of two words, Seanachie and Iha, which are the Irish words for storyteller and night. So Seanchoiche is a storytelling night that I've been running for just under 4 years. We've been running storytelling nights all around the world. We started off in Dublin, which is where I'm from. I'm from Ireland. And now we run Seanchoiche in multiple countries, such as the UK, France, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, America, and finally, we have come to Ghana. This is our first time in Ghana. It's our first time in West Africa, actually. We've only ever run Seanchoiche in South Africa before. And I'm extremely excited to hear the stories that are told this evening at GYA Festival. GYA Festival is obviously a literary festival that is dedicated to storytelling in so many different ways, through literature, through poetry, through spoken word, of course, through theatre, which we saw last night. But today, this session is all dedicated to personal storytelling. We have opened up the floor where we have welcomed members of the public to apply to share their stories. And these stories can range from personal anecdotes to pieces of folklore, fiction, spoken word, narratives, diary entries, everything and anything as long as it constitutes a story, as long as it has a start, a middle, and an end. And it centers around the theme of connection, loosely. Some of the stories are very much about the theme of connection, and some of them are not as much. But connection is very much, an endemic theme in so many different narratives, whether personal, whether narratives of your own through the past. So each and every story will be dedicated to that theme in some way, shape, or form. Seanchoiche has been running, as I said, for 4 years. I set it up just after COVID, when the world started to open up again. I really found that so many people had become quite introspective during the pandemic. A lot of people had had quite a lot of time to reflect on the past. You'd be out for a walk when we were in our lockdowns and you'd run into a neighbour that you didn't really speak to prior to the pandemic, but because you hadn't spoken to anyone for around 4 or 5 days, you'd be bursting at the seams to tell them every single thing that you'd done that day. And I realised that there was this new magic in the mundanity that needed to be celebrated, and we needed to really foster a sense of storytelling and shine a light on the ancient traditions of storytelling that exist in Ireland. For those of you guys who might not be familiar with the term Seanachie, that's a Gaelic word. It means storyteller, but it's been a word that's been adopted into the Irish way of speaking the English language as well. The Seanachie has always been a really important figure in Irish society. They would go around villages to, all across Ireland, sharing stories that could have ranged from, mythological stories that have been passed down through the generations, or gossip from the previous village that they had just visited. And Irish people had this gravitational pull towards the Seanachie because for a lot of Irish people in the 16th, 17th, and 18th century, literacy wasn't their strong point. So the only way of connecting to folklore, to history, to gossip, to the news was through listening to a Seanachie hold court in a public space, or in a cottage, or in a church. And gradually, people started to learn how to read, and storytelling became much more private, but oral history is still something that Irish people very much have interwebbed in our culture. And as we've been running Seanchoiche in multiple countries, in Australia, across Europe, we've really noticed that oral history is in so many different cultures. It's really at the base and at the crux of every single culture that exists, because storytelling is culture. It's the last thing that every single person can connect with. To use the cliche, everybody has a story. That is very much the case. We've realized, over the past 4 years, we've had over 5,000 people speak and tell their stories at our events. And a lot of these are people who've never stood on a stage before. They're people that have never held a microphone before. And we really see the importance of giving people the opportunity to get something off their chest, share their story, walk through their life so that people in the audience might be able to relate to the stories that are told. They might be able to see their own personal story through the personal stories that are shared at a space like Seanchoiche, because empathy is basically what we value our events on. It's the idea of sitting there, listening to someone speak, relating to that story, and then seeing your own story through the narratives that are shared. Seanchoiche differs from a public speaking event or TED Talk or a stand-up comedy night where it's the speaker's exclusive responsibility to hold the audience in the palm of their hand. At Seanchoiche, it's equally the audience responsibilities to hold the speaker in the palms of their hands too. So if any of the speakers get nervous tonight, you have to remember some of the people speaking here, they're not writers, they're not public speakers with a lot of experience in it, so they might get a wee bit nervous. So if they do get a little bit nervous, rally them on, cheer them on, be that supportive audience that we need you to be for this event to work beautifully and for the people to really kind of benefit from getting up here and sharing their story. As I said, the theme is connection, very loosely based on this theme, but really connection can come in so many different shapes, whether it's a romantic connection, whether it's a personal connection to a friend or a family member, whether it's connecting the dots in your own story to get your narrative across. Each and every story will be based on this theme. And in total, we have 9 speakers. Each speaker will go on for no longer than 10 minutes, and each speaker will come in with their own approach in the theme, so that together all 9 storytellers really kind of close a circle of multiple approaches to a simple theme here at PGF Festival. We were brought here thanks to Culture Ireland, and I'd like to give a massive thank you to Ambassador Peter Ryan and to Aduke Gomez, who've been helping us get from Dublin via London to Accra. And we are very excited to be hosting this event here, and we cannot wait to host many more events here in Ghana, and hopefully some of the people who speak tonight might be interested in hosting our events down the line as we continue to grow in Ghana. So with that, I would like us to give the warmest, biggest bula bus, as we say in Irish, or a big warm round of applause to our first Seanchoiche this evening. If you can give it up for Aduke Gomez as she makes her way up here.
Good evening, Accra. Same. My story today. So when Kieran approached me and the theme, connections, I was like, hey, God, I'm going to come and sit in Lagos and be in Accra and be sharing my Lagos stories, and we all know where that can lead us. And I thought, okay, and I had like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stories going in my head. Which one would I say today? But the story I'm going to tell you is not necessarily my story, but it is kind of my story. And why I chose this story was because of a couple of things that have happened since I was in Accra. Last night, we saw the play, and rather the dramatized reading. And one of the themes of it was the importance of written documentation. If you remember, anybody was here? Yes? Yeah, okay. And the theme of it was the importance of writing, of wills, of documentation. And then this morning I went to Osu Castle, which of course the story is not told there without mentioning the transatlantic slavery, which of course brings me to me, if anybody's wondering why my surname is Gomez. So my ancestor was kidnapped from a little town in Lagos in in Nigeria in the 1820s called Owu. And he was kidnapped and brought all the way down with his 2 young cousins, brought all the way down to Lagos. Along the way in Abeokuta, the younger one was sold. She was 9 years old in Abeokuta. So this is 1820s. But he and his other cousin, who was a bit older, they made the trip to Bahia. Now, sometime in 1836, his enslaver sends him back to Lagos to trade. And he does this a couple of times. And on one trip, he's walking down the streets of Lagos. Remember, this is 1838 or so. And he's walking down, he yes, hey. And who is it but his auntie? The mother of the 9-year-old and the other girl. And the auntie tells him, oh, after you people left and had been kidnapped, I followed you by road and stream, and I brought back your little cousin. Here she is now, all grown up. Yeah. Oh, wow, hey. and says, oh, by the way, in Bahia, I also met your other child. So time goes on, and because it's 10 minutes, and I can see he's on the clock. So time goes on, and by 1852, Louisa, as she's now known, has also come to settle in Lagos with Francisco, as he's now known. He's now known as Francisco Gomez. Originally, his name was Shetolu. Originally, her name was Ayobome. And they're settled in Lagos. But you know, time has passed, right? Okay? So Francisco is a man, so he has wife, children. Louisa, over 40. Husband, right? So she lives alone, but she has a house, okay? And she has a deed for her house. And she has a house, and she has a young man who helps her with chores. But they must have fought, because the young man arranges with his friend to go and strangle Louisa. Oh yeah, strangles her. Now, one of the things about this story is only do what they tell you to do. Okay? What were the instructions? To strangle. He, the strangler, also takes her gold necklace. And takes the gold necklace to go and sell to the other women of the Afro-Brazilian community in Lagos. The Afro-Brazilian community are the people who have been enslaved and have come back and settled in Lagos. And in Accra, they are known as the Tabom. And he's selling his purloined goods. As this Yaya Louisa's necklace, how did you get Yaya Louisa's necklace? What can he say? Sings like a bird and tells on his accomplice. They are arrested, they go to a trial, executed, all that. But there's a problem of her house, okay? If you don't have an heir, what happens to the house? Lawyers in the house? It goes back to the government, right? Her sister says, no, hey, I'm the heir. Say, who are you? I'm the heir. I promise you I'm the heir. Say, no, forget about you. But in 1887, there's a new law passed. And this time, she goes back to court, and this time she takes cousin Francisco along. And remember, in those days, everything is written by hand, okay? And Francisco gives his testimony, everything that I've told you, from when they were kidnapped, when they went to Brazil, when they came back, how they are related. And this time, although the house has been sold, she gets the compensation. But fast forward to 1986, and a researcher from Emory University is researching her PhD. And she searches in the archives of the Lagos High Court. And in the archives of the Lagos High Court, she finds this judgment. And in the judgment, she finds where the judge has recorded everything that Francisco has said. And I'm sharing this story on behalf of all the many children of the diaspora who don't know their history, who don't know that connection. And for myself, I feel particularly, I guess, fortunate, blessed to be able to have a written document and proof of my family's history and explanation for my non-Nigerian name. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Eduke. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jimmy. That was a fascinating story, Aduke. Thank you so much for sharing it. We did listen to a wonderful chat yesterday about the importance of archiving, and I think it particularly comes into relevance with the story that Aduke shared with us, so thank you for that. That was excellent. I'd like to welcome our next speaker, if everyone can give a warm round of applause for Annie as she makes her way up here to the stage. Keep those applauses going, guys. There's a bit of a distance to travel. Is this the correct mic stand for this mic?
It's all right, I'll manage somehow. Hi guys, good evening. My name is Anita Ahiadome, and I'm going to read you a story called The Man at the Station, and it's a true story. And forgive me, I'm old school, I love my paper, so at some point I'm gonna juggle the mic and the paper. Thank you. I walked over to the train station in Agrigento. My day of touring had left me a bit parched and exhausted. The Valley of the Temples had not disappointed. The scale of it took my breath away, and the scorching sun seemed determined to tan me a little further. Upon arrival, I noticed there was no train. It should have been boarding soon, but the tracks were empty. I asked one of the attendants when the train would arrive, and he simply said, "No lo so," and walked away. He didn't know. As my brain started to worry because I was 3 hours away from my Airbnb in Palermo, it was already past 3 p.m. I realized I didn't have enough to book a hotel here for the night if the train didn't show up. Memories of being stranded at Niagara Falls at age 18 started running through my mind. The difference being there was no one to save me this time, or so I thought. As I resigned myself to wait for the train, a middle-aged man sat next to me. "Ciao," he greeted. "Ciao," I responded. He then pulled out a mortadella sandwich from a brown paper bag he was holding and offered me a bite. "No, grazie," I responded. I loved mortadella, but now was not the time to mangia. I was too worried. He started to converse with me in Sicilian. I quickly told him, "No capito," I didn't understand. "Parlo inglese?" "No." We didn't have a language in common. Again, that was what I thought, until he continued to talk to me in Sicilian, and I understood what he was saying. After the usual pleasantries, he asked me if I enjoyed Agrigento. Yes, of course, it was beautiful. He seemed proud that I loved his city. It encouraged him more. He told me that he lived there all his life, and he had a wife and 2 children at home. He asked if I had a partner, and I told him I was a divorcee. He seemed saddened by the news, but then quickly perked up and said, perhaps I would marry a Sicilian, not an Italian. He seemed very pleased with that notion. I laughed. As time elapsed, our conversation passed the rudimentary stage, and we spoke about life, what we believed in. Him in full Sicilian, and I in my blend of English, French, and the vocabulary I'd learned in my Italian 101 class. The language barrier didn't mean anything. We understood each other perfectly, at times filling in each other's sentences. My worry about being left in Agrigento eased as 2 hours passed, and this gentleman became my companion. After the mortadella sandwich was polished off, we shared an espresso to continue our conversation. I noticed he knew everyone who worked at the train station. I asked him if he had worked there before, and he said no. He had been coming to the train station daily for the past few months. He was unemployed, a victim of the financial crisis in the country. He quietly told me that every morning he got dressed, allowed his wife to pack him a sandwich, and then he left home, only to return at the end of the day. Perché? Why? I asked. He said that if he returned home earlier, his wife would worry. So he acted as if he had work to do, even though he returned home daily with no money. This little deception made them both feel better. I think he saw me worry about him because he quickly smiled and said, "Look, if I wasn't here, I wouldn't have met you." Si vero, that is true. My train arrived shortly after, and we parted ways that evening, sharing words of encouragement and even a long hug. I didn't remember his name, but his story stayed with me long past the journey back to Palermo and then back home. That short connection stayed with me all these years. A father striving to do better for his family during the bleakest of times. I often think about that man at the train station, how two strangers can meet in a moment of uncertainty and see each other so clearly. It reminds me of another man whose presence and absence have shaped my life in equal measure. A few weeks ago, I sat across from an elderly man whilst I was blinking to make sure my eyes didn't deceive me. He wrung his hands in a way that stirred something familiar in me. He then turned his hands over and revealed his palms for a split second. And there I saw it. For years, I've compared the palms of my hands to others in the family. Theirs were always slightly more toned, a richer color than mine. Mine were always fairer, damn near anemic. I actually blamed my forever lingering low hemoglobin numbers on it. It was just something unique to me, I surmised, until that split second. There it was. I had his palms. He was now in his 80s. My fond memories of him date back to his 40s, when I barely reached his hip. I was his partner in crime, his shadow when he was home. I took naps on his lap as he read the newspaper. I often snuck him meat from the kitchen as my mother cooked until she realized it was for his belly and she gently swatted me away. I laughed heartily as he showed me his firm bicep muscles and proudly claimed it was called the bomb during his days in Hamburg in the 1970s. He always had a story from a different nation because he was forever a traveler. His travel lust is something I inherited as well. I looked forward to seeing him when he arrived and cried when he left. He was always leaving, always in pursuit of a business venture. He was a nomad, but he had created a family. I remember my first day of nursery. He tried to leave, but I was too distraught, so he stayed. He put me on the swing and started to push me back and forth until I was calm and started to enjoy myself. I kept going higher and higher. The pace of the swing never changed. So I never suspected anything until I turned and looked back, expecting his smiling face, only to see a new one of the nursery helpers. He had left again. This was an ongoing theme, almost a game of roulette he played with our emotions until he left for good, building a new life on another continent. We felt abandoned. In truth, we were. He felt he was creating a new opportunity for us. Whatever the intentions were, he started a separation that would span decades. Now, here he was again. The universe had brought us together. The anger and disappointment I had held in my heart had faded with maturity. I somehow understood him because I knew I was nomadic in nature too. I dared to want to know more, even when it was not convenient or logical. I dared to want more for myself. As we shared beers, he told me of his adventures. I watched his eyes twinkle with pride. Him watching me, I watching him. Our next journey has begun. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. That was absolutely beautiful. One of the themes that we love to set at Seanchoiche is the theme of strangers, because I think everyone has a beautiful story about connecting with a stranger and the memories it invokes, and that was a really gorgeous example of that. I'm from Ireland, if you can't tell, but I used to live in Buenos Aires. It was my first job. My first big boy job was 13,000 kilometers away from home. And on a hot, sticky January afternoon, I found out that my grandmother had passed away. And she was back in Ireland. And my mother, is my best friend, and this was her best friend who had just died. And she was 97. We did expect the passing, but nonetheless, it just caused me to feel such hysteria. I was really upset, and I was crying and crying and crying outside a cafe. And this woman that was clearly rushing, she was a lawyer. A couple of people might be lawyers here, as Aduke was able to point out. She had a meeting pretty, soon after she saw me, but she stopped and she asked me what was wrong. She was Argentinian. And I told her that my grandmother had just died. And she was a bit flustered, and she had her files in her hand, and she had her wig on, and she clearly was in a bit of a rush. But she gave me a hug in the way only a stranger can hug a stranger when that stranger has a meeting in 10 minutes' time. And I went back into the cafe, and I was working from there, and I was looking up flights that were way too expensive, so I couldn't be back with my mum to bury her mother. And then suddenly I heard the jingle of the door open, and in walked this very same woman. And she told me she had cancelled all of her meetings that afternoon, and she sat down in front of me and she asked me to tell her all about my grandmother. And I spoke to her for the next 2 hours, and I never learned this woman's name. But it's those connections I think you can find when you least expect them to that will stick with you forever. And that woman was 5 years ago, and she probably doesn't even remember that interaction, but I remember it every day. So that story really invoked that memory for me, so thank you so much. It was beautiful. I would like to welcome our next Seanchoiche this evening. If everyone can give a big bula bus to Bren as he makes his way up here to share his story. So I take the scenic route. So keep going, guys. He's taking the scenic route.
Hi guys, good evening. How are we all? Great, right? My name is Bren, and I'm going to tell a story about holding space. So one of the most valuable things life has taught me is how to hold space and allow others to hold space for me too. And I want to share a little bit of how that journey has been for me and how I've gotten through it. So first, a little bit of background on me. I grew up in Zimbabwe, born and raised there, and then when I was 7 years old, moved to Ireland. And, I think, I grew up in all-boys schools, so you know how that is. In terms of from an emotional development perspective. And I think, in that upbringing as well, I think I had a few gaps in terms of developing emotionally as you go into, posts, into real life, and you're not on necessarily a straight and narrow anymore. So I think, there was a lot of ups and downs, and I think my biggest thing was trying to learn how to listen to myself, how to value myself, how to acknowledge myself, and as I grew. And then when I was 21 years old, I went into therapy. So I remember walking into my very first therapy session. I was confused, anxious. I was a bit of a shell of myself. And I remember the first question my therapist asked me was how are you? And I think in that environment, in that moment, I was just I really, really have no idea, because I don't know how to hold the space for myself to be able to recognize how I feel in this moment, especially when that question is presented in a very intentional way and not in a fleeting, passing by the street way. So that was the start of that journey. That was the start of that. And it was rough, the wheels metaphorically fell off the bus every now and again in that. But learning that skill has really changed everything for me. And I think it's actually one of the reasons why I'm standing here in Accra, right now. I think it's one of the reasons I know Gaff. We're in the same graduate program. And it's also the thing that when I look back at myself 10 years ago, if somebody had told me that, in the next 10 years, you're going to live in Spain and then go to West Africa, Nigeria, Cameroon, and Accra, and fully move your life from Ireland to Accra, I'd be oh, go away, you're having a laugh. And, I am still learning. I'm still on that journey, for sure, but, I do really, really recognize, and I do really, really love that I've gone from that confused 21-year-old person, standing in my therapist's office to a slightly less confused 29-year-old now. And I think, recently for me as well, this really became quite an important thing. Over the last few months, at the start of this year, I was right, I'm gonna leave my very cushy job and I'm gonna absolutely commit to starting a new life in Accra. I loved it so much when I was here that when I moved to Nigeria last year, I was I always had it in the back of my mind that I really want to go back here. I really love it here. And then the year ended up being absolutely wild. I think that's the only word to describe it. And in all of that chaos and all of those plot twists, we had heartbreak in there. We had, I think actually I'll tell a little side funny story. Funny enough, 3 weeks ago, I actually moved back to Ireland, and within a week moved back to Ghana. And I think there's actually a few people here who are at my going away party in Accra. And, I was so lucky in that sense that when I arrived in Ireland, the right opportunity came for me to come back, and I came back and I'm loving it. But I've been very retrospective, especially in the past week, and looking back over what's been like a really difficult year. And I was like, how did I get through this? How did I get through this chaos and everything that was going on? And it really came back to, that I was able to hold space, that skill that I'd learned as a 21-year-old. And really like taking stock, because I think we can live very fast lives where it's very hard to keep track with everything. But sometimes when you pause and you look at how far you've come, you really realize, wow, like it's absolutely baffling. And then I think in that as well, like to bring it back to connection, is that in learning to hold space for yourself, you also learn to allow others to hold space for you. You also allow yourself to bring in genuine, meaningful connections into your life, which when you're going through those hard times, you're able to then, extend and branch out. And I think, especially for men sometimes, it's quite difficult to ask for help. And that is like one of the things that, for me, I feel like I was able to accept friends and hold space in that true and genuine connection kind of way, and I'll be forever grateful for that, and also looking forward to what lesson my 30s is about to teach me. So.
Well done, Bren. Well done, Bren. An excellent message, and definitely something that's important for a lot of men, but also a lot of women to hear. So thank you so much for sharing that, and welcome back to Accra. I'd like to welcome Dami to the floor next. If everyone can give Dami a big warm round of applause as she makes it up here. Woo! Well, she's popular.
Whoa, it's a lot of people. Hi. Hi, everyone. So as I understand it, the theme for this year is connection. Sorry, I have my phone up here because I actually couldn't collect my thoughts until I sat on the kitchen floor a few hours ago, so here we go. When I thought of the word connection, I thought back to growing up. And, it's not really something that was common when I was growing up, connecting with other people, being emotional, being vulnerable, and being able to connect to other people. That's not really something that was a common thing for me. I'm Nigerian. I grew up in Nigeria. Thank you. I'm in Accra as a missionary. And, as I just think back, I'm like, wow, as a Nigerian, the way I grew up was very much pull yourself up by your own bootstrap, kind of mindset. And, we had this whole thing, hey, we don't tell non-family members family secrets. And, that's technically supposed to mean that we do talk about it with family members, but that almost never happened. And whenever it did happen, you kind of wished it didn't because it didn't end up the way you were hoping it would. Just that concept of opening up about my pain and connecting with people through my pain, it had to be a learned skill for me. I started working on it about 12 years ago when I first dedicated my life to a life of basically a missionary. And quite honestly, 12 years into it, it's still a struggle. When I saw the topic of connection and I was asked to tell a story, I thought of one of the biggest sources of pain in my life, and just how amazingly and shockingly it has actually helped me to connect to so many people, especially women, on levels that feel so just surreal and unreal. Again, my name is Dami. And about 6 years ago, I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder. And quite honestly, 6 years into it, I feel worse. Now, if I am to be honest with myself, my depression did not start 6 years ago. It started much earlier. And I'm pretty sure I deleted most of it from my brain just to protect myself. And these past few days, I've been remembering little pockets of memories that I had buried deep within. Memories of loneliness, of abandonment, of feeling abandoned, of trauma that I just minimized and decided was not trauma. It was just a normal part of life. If anybody here has ever been to the office of a psychiatrist for an evaluation, they ask you questions upon questions for hours on end about your life and your childhood and your dreams and ambitions and secret thoughts and feelings that you're not supposed to say out loud to other human beings. You know, and it can be so exhausting, you know. And for me, I'd talk about childhood trauma, sexual abuse, domestic abuse, emotional abuse, and, you know, just keep naming them. And, you know, I'd love to go deeper into all of this, but I only have 10 minutes, so I'm just gonna move on to the connection part of my story. When I first got diagnosed, to be honest, I consider myself woke. I consider myself well-read and exposed, and I didn't think I would feel any stigma attached to the diagnosis. I just thought, you know, scientifically, I know what this means. I should be fine. But I actually did not want to admit it to myself because to me, it meant weakness and it meant people were now going to look down on me and it meant just all these different emotions that I didn't want to feel. And then, I mean, after working through all of that, amazingly, I started to mentor other women who suffered with similar mental illnesses. And my secret thoughts became not so secret anymore because they had the same ones. It was very interesting, you know, thoughts like, wouldn't it be nice if I was dead? Or, you know, I wish this car would hit me and I'd be done. Or thoughts like, I'm tired, I'm just tired. Or when I look into my future, I just see blank, I don't really see anything. Or even thoughts like, I never thought I'd make it to this age. Now, what do? I thought I'd be dead already. Thoughts like, how do people do it? Like, how do the normal people do it? How do they smile and look forward to things and yearn to live life? And little by little, you know, I had this community, and we went on the ride together. You know, we had panic attack phone calls together and turned the waiting room of a psychiatric hospital into friendship time together and wondered about these normal ones together, learned to cope together, even plan some future events together, which, to be honest, if you know very well, is almost unheard of for those that struggle with a mental illness. And some of these women were in my age group, some were younger, but it didn't matter. I mean, we all came from different backgrounds, we had different socioeconomic statuses, different upbringings, but it didn't matter because our pain connected us. And you know, in all the euphoria of it all, I started to hope for better days, you know, for all of us. But unfortunately, about a year ago, one of these women, a mentee, but really like my little sister and my friend, she decided to take her life. And you know, for me, everything just kind of paused. I felt confusion, I felt angry, I felt despair. And it's one of those things that's not easy to express to anybody who hasn't gone through it. And, you know, I remember saying to myself, man, you know, I invested in this, I hoped, and now she's dead. I'm never going to do this again. I'm not going to invest my heart in other people suffering with mental illness and dream together and hope together, and because I can't, this can't happen to me again. I can't feel the way I feel again. But you know, in terms of connection, when I think back, As much pain as it brings me sometimes when I think about her, I wouldn't give up any of that connection for anything else. And that's just it. It may come with the pain, it might come with despair, but I wouldn't give up the connection for anything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Dami. Dami, thank you for sharing such a personal piece. Give it up for Dami, that was incredible. Thank you so much for trusting in the space to share a story like that with the room, Dami. The topic has affected us all in different ways, whether directly or indirectly, and it really is important to hear these stories and heal with them. So thank you so much, Dami, that was excellent. I would like to welcome Sessa to the floor next to share her story. If everyone can give her a big, warm round of applause as she makes her way up here.
Hello, everyone. Okay, my name is Cessa, Cessa, and I want us to imagine that you are toddlers, like 7-year-old to 2 years old, because that's where my story is coming from. When I saw it was about connection, and then I remember this story I'm about to tell you, how I had to tell my little ones that mommy had lymphoma, because they started asking lots of questions. Mommy, why are you always going to the hospital? The doctors are not nice. You know, if you have, like here where we live in Ghana, if you want to scare your children to do something, you tell them that you're going to take them to the nurses to give them what? Injection. Good. So I would tell them, okay, mommy has to go to the hospital right now. And then, so they kept asking questions, especially my curious 7-year-old. She'd be like, mommy, didn't, you know. So let's get into the story. How I told my children about lymphoma. By the way, lymphoma is a form of blood cancer, and I'm here fighting it, giving it the middle finger. So, the title of the story is The Brave Little Soldiers. Once upon a time, this was actually a bedtime story I told them, in a cozy house with pity-patter of little fits and bedtime giggles. This is why I tickle them. There lived Mommy, that's me, who loved two very special little people, more than the stars love the skies, and more than the sea kiss the rocks. Every night, we read stories about dragons and rainbows and brave explorers and Anansi the spider, and of course, Shantewa. But one night, after all the toys were asleep, I actually put the toys to sleep. I don't know if any of us have done that. And the blankets were pulled up. Sorry, in the story, I'll be calling them like Blankie is actually the name for blankets. And I said, tonight, my loves, I have a story that is about me and about some brave little soldiers who live inside my body. And the 2-year-old, who is a boy with lots of hair, Mama, soldiers? I'm like, yes, tiny little soldiers. And as he goes, Mama, did you zap them into your body? I said, yes, I did. Their eyes grew wild. Soldiers inside of you? Yes, I said, tiny invisible ones that live in my blood and in my bones. Ew! They said, Then my older one said, like superheroes. Exactly. Yes, superheroes. But this time they are tiny, invisible superheroes. One day, some of those little soldiers got really confused. Really, really confused. And they forgot to stop fighting. And they started growing and growing and growing. Too many, too fast. And she said, Mommy, were they growing like the soldiers in the David story? I said, yes. Just imagine, so many kings came together with plenty soldiers inside Mommy's body. And then Fifi frowned. Mama, are they naughty soldiers? Not naughty, I said. Just a bit lost. Then let's find them. And when that happens, I say, when they are lost, it's called lymphoma. And my 2-year-old has been trying big vocabularies like calling cucumber bubumba, and then he tried to pronounce the lymphoma, and we all started laughing. So now, you know, lymphoma is quite a big word for little ears. And then my 7-year-old, like, she starts trying to pronounce the word after me. And I said, well, lymphoma means that mommy soldiers, and they need a nap. So, how do they get a nap? They remember daddy. Daddy tells them, go to your room, it's sleeping time. I said, no, that's not how they get a nap. Mommy soldiers need a nap, and the doctors and the nurses are helping them find their pillows again. That's why they can't take a nap. And they started smiling. And then let's look for their pillows, Mommy, so that they could sleep. I was like, yeah, the doctors and the nurses are my special helpers. They're helping them to find their blankets, they're helping them to find their teddies, and also their pillows most especially, so that they could have a nap, so that daddy wouldn't come and say, it is sleeping time. So, do you know what? How do they take a nap? AC asked. The nurses give them medicines, and this medicine whispers to the soldiers, here, it's okay, you could rest now. Mommy, is it when you promise me toffees when I wake up? I said, yeah, that is it. Then my older one, you know, she's 7, so she knows. Mommy, does it hurt? Looking deep into my eyes. I said, sometimes. The medicine makes me very tired. And sometimes my hair might take a little vacation. Mommy, your hair is going on a vacation? AC asked. I said, yes, that's why Mommy has been tying scarves all day. Mommy, can I see? And then I took off my scarf and I showed her where the patch of hair has gotten lost. This side of the hair took a vacation, AC. So it will be coming back. Did it go to Grandma? I think so. Grandma is taking care of it. So every day I rest, I stay in bed, I drink my soup, and that's why I can't eat bread with you anymore. And that is why I cuddle you, because that is the strongest medicine of all. When I told them that, they snuggled closer, tiny arms around my neck, and I felt braver than any knight in any storybook. Then Fifi said, can we help the soldiers too? I said, oh yes. You can help every time you share your hugs and your giggles and your silly little songs. Every smile you give me is like a magic shield that helps the medicine work better. And Essie, still looking at me with concern, is the medicine bitter, Mommy? I said, sometimes. is very bitter. So I said, but you know something? The little soldiers have started taking a nap. As if someone has just turned up 2 little suns right there in my arms. They lit up with smiles. And that night, I told them, this is our brave story. Some days, I will feel like a sleepy bear. Some days, like a roaring lion. And I'll come to you roaring. But every day, I'll still be your mommy. And we will have all the bedtime stories and giggles and the love that will fill this house. They nodded. Fifi have started dozing off. And then as they drifted off to sleep, I imagined them dreaming of tiny soldiers learning how to take a nap, of doctors, of nurses, and of the love that glowed brighter than any night light. I sat there for a while, listening to their little snores, and I looked, and I knew that cancer got the wrong babe. Thank you.
Thank you, Sessa. That was an incredible story, so beautifully retold. And how lucky your kids are to have a storyteller mother like you. That was absolutely beautiful. I've written a piece all about the connections when you least expect it, and it's called Unplanned Orchestras. A couple of weeks ago, I went to see the ethereal Icelandic post-rock group Sigur Rós perform at the Royal Albert Hall in London with the National Contemporary Orchestra. An utterly transformative experience for many reasons. If anyone has ever been to the Royal Albert Hall, they'll know how majestic the space is. No matter where you are situated in that amphitheatre, even if you're standing up on the 5th floor in the Gods, you feel completely swallowed up by the space, by the round beauty of it all. The acoustics are great because it's a concert hall. Of course, they're great. We'll have to have a whole entire other conversation if the acoustics in a concert hall like the Royal Albert Hall were not good. But jokes aside, from the minute you arrive, you are completely entranced by the ambience of the space, and then by the music once the performance begins. My cousin took me for my 30th birthday, and given that that was 3 days after the absolute rager of a party I threw for that birthday, I can safely say that the emotions were doing the Lord's work. I was pretty fragile. Sigur Rós completely overcame me around 7 minutes into the gig, and I couldn't stop crying. I'd never gone to see an orchestra before. Inadvertently, I had seen orchestras at theatre shows or when elements of an orchestral suite support a gig, but I had never intentionally gone to see one. I was completely overtaken by the voice of Sigur Rós's lead singer, Jónsi, and his ability to almost imitate an instrument with his unique falsettos and his impressive lung capacity and incredible range. But what struck a chord with me, it's a musical pun, thanks. Thank you. What struck a chord with me even more was the orchestrated magic of the team piecing together the music as it connected over their own melodies. It amazed me to see 32 strings, 8 brass, 6 winds at the very least, and a cluster of percussionists, a boys' choir, 3 band members, including 1 piano player, all coming together to perform 2 hours of music under the vivid guidance of the conductor to Jónsi's lyrics that are entirely in a made-up language. The music moved me to tears, along with my cousin and every single person I could see in my row that's shoulders were shaking, most likely because they were crying and not laughing. And while I sat there, I marveled at the power of a team that could connect together so grandly as an orchestra. The unison, the harmony, the wordless communication that takes place between every member of an orchestra brings together a musical ensemble that I can still hear when I close my eyes today, 2 weeks later. And I imagine the sounds of that sweet concert will stick with me until I draw my last breath. But it got me thinking of the attention to detail that goes into a team like an orchestra. The hours of practice, preparation, cohesion between the members, the symbiosis and the tensions that arise between each performer, the power that they can bring to a stage, to a crowd, to individuals, to the Royal fucking Albert Hall. It got me thinking even further, however, as I peered closer at the orchestrated nature of this team, about the teams that have come together in a less orchestrated fashion. What about the power of teams that were never supposed to become teams? The teams that connected in an emergency, in a last-minute scramble. A team full of strangers who 5 minutes before said formation had never met before. Why haven't we ever held center stage for those types of connections? I was in Amsterdam at the end of the summer for work, and a friend and I were sitting along the canal, drinking a coffee, among 8 other tables. In a flash of a couple of seconds, there was total commotion. A loud kerfuffle 3 tables over. A woman started screaming, "Pasaporte, bolsa!" She was Spanish. A tourist, and her handbag, which had her passport and her grandmother's wedding ring, had gotten stolen. There were a couple of other less valuable things that had been nicked as well in that bag. And this had all happened in the blink of an eye by a man who was pretending to look at the menu while standing next to her before he grabbed the bag and ran. It all happened too quickly for anybody to register what had happened or chase him, but the woman, through tears, explained to us as we all gathered around her, around 10 of us, that she'd been travelling back to Spain that evening, having visited her recently deceased Dutch grandmother's home one final time in Amsterdam to take home some heirlooms, including the ring, and that her passport was now missing too. Immediately, an Italian tourist called Enrico, who actually knew a lot about these types of robberies, said that he had experienced something similar in a cafe in Bari, and that the patrons of the cafe immediately created a WhatsApp group and dedicated the next hour to finding the stolen backpack, which they found it. Luckily, this lady's handbag was luminous orange and large, a fairly conspicuous and arguably questionable fashion choice, but we won't say anything further about that. Within seconds, the 10 of us were added into a WhatsApp group, forming our own version of a vigilante walkie-talkie system, with a picture of the admittedly daring choice of handbag as a profile photo. The WhatsApp group was called Handbag, and a description of the perpetrator of the crime was added into it. And we all went searching for the bag, sharing updates, photographing random handbags in public spaces over the next 30 minutes. 1 or 2 men who sat at tables with their wives' handbags while they were in the restroom or settling their bills were questioned by myself and some fellow vigilantes. Where did that bag come from? What brand is it? What's inside it? Etc. But within these 30 minutes, a German couple who were in our group, who had gone to the west of the city on the bikes that they had, thanks to using the AirTag feature, were able to find the robber with the handbag intact, threatening to bring him to the police until he returned the bag there and then. Our little orchestra of vigilantes played one movement together, and it ended in harmony. Even the fucking pickpocket got off easy. He was also visibly impressed and quite shocked to have been tracked down, and he was delighted that we didn't send him to the police. We just got the handbag back. Last January, I was backpacking in Mexico. It was a 5-hour bus journey from San Jose del Pacifico up in the mountains of Oaxaca, down to Cipolite on the coast. Sweaty, hot, bumpy roads and suffocating air inside in this bus. Around 1 hour into the journey, a Finnish girl that was on the bus got a phone call from home. Within moments of picking up the phone, she was crying. Her mum had died. The news was broken to her there and then. Helpless, frustrated, and in visible shock, she proceeded to have only what can be described as a panic attack. A local doctor was on the bus with us, with no English, who was able to attend to her as we trundled along the bumpy roads. I was able to translate for the doctor, while a few other English speakers and some locals came to console her amid the tragic chaos. We all agreed this girl needed to get in a flight back to Helsinki as soon as possible. So we made the collective decision to ask the bus driver to divert the journey to Puerto Escondido Airport, which added another 3.5 hours onto our journey. But none of us cared. The important thing was to get this girl home so she could grieve her mother. We sat with her the entire journey, listening to her process this sudden grief, crying with her, laughing with her, taking turns to share our own stories of loss and sorrow, and rallying as a team until we got her where she needed to be. On that bus, we became a chamber ensemble of compassion, strangers united in rhythm by one girl's grief. No one looked away. Every word, every translation, every shared silence was a note in an unplanned symphony of care. When we were just out of university around 12 years ago, aged 23, one of our closest friends found out that she was 7 months pregnant. She had no idea she'd been pregnant that whole time, and she literally had 2 months to move home from Asia, where she was volunteering, reconnect with her friend with whom she was now going to be sharing a child, and build a home with very little time preparation. But what she did have was reams of support from around 40 of us close friends, 10 to 15 of us still living in London, and the rest of us scattered around the world. We did what we could to send messages of support, compiled a video for her to watch at the baby shower, but also we sent her hand-me-downs from our childhood homes to her childhood home. Basic homeware, baby products, a setup one normally has 9 months and more to plan for. Once the baby was born, we'll call her Charlie, she was blessed with 8 godparents, limitless access to babysitters, and when her first birthday came around, the police had to be called because it was quite honestly the most popular 1-year-old in Clapham's birthday that day, with around 100 of us in the back garden well into the early hours in the morning, partying so loudly and lightly that the baby actually had to be relocated to a babysitter's house so that it could all be above board. We were showing up to celebrate this baby's life, but also to celebrate our friend who had been faced with one of the loneliest and scariest hurdles imaginable 1 year prior. When Charlie was born, her mother brought her into the world, a mother so deeply valued by her team of friends who have honestly, over the past 12 years, been bound closer to one another through this unity, through this spontaneous team of aunts and uncles as we grow our village in London and across the world to raise this child. A chorus of friends improvising a family, proof that sometimes loneliness can be drowned out by the collective sound of love. I've been thinking about that night at the Royal Albert Hall often, how those musicians moved as one, how every bow and breath was planned to perfection. But the orchestras that have stayed with me were not conducted or rehearsed. They were spontaneous, flawed, and entirely human. In a world that feels increasingly atomized, these moments remind me that connection doesn't always need structure. Sometimes all it takes is a room full of strangers willing to play the same song, even for a few fleeting bars. That's how we combat loneliness, and that's how we show connection with one another. Not with noise, but with harmony. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Keep the energy going. We have 4 more speakers, and with that, I would like to welcome Nightingale to the floor as he makes his way up to share his story. If everyone can give him a big, warm round of applause as he makes his way up to the stage.
Good evening. My name is Akusiade. I was born in the Ashanti region, and then at the age of 5, my mom and my dad separated, so my grandmother took me to the eastern region. So he was the one that brought me up till I finished my high school education. Unfortunately, when I finished my high school education, my grandmom died, so I had to enter street. The story that I'm coming to tell you guys, my English is not that perfect, but you guys will pardon me. And moreover, and then when I entered street, like, there was no one to take care of me, so I did bad things like gambling, stealing, a whole lot of things. Until I met a man who was also into another type of crime. You know, he was into money laundering. Because I'm a street boy, I was trying to survive nowhere, so I joined him. So we worked for like 8 years. Then 2017, I got some money, so I decided to travel abroad and then make extra money legitimately. So I went there as I got a business visa. Actually, I was looking for visa here and there, but they were not giving me, so I chose another path like a businessman, which was very fast. So I entered South Korea in 2017. Due to my type of visa, I was not supposed to work, so I got advice from those Ghanaians over there that, hey, my guy, if you really want to stay here, work and make money, you have to go illegal, which was the advice they gave me. So I thought of it, then I was like, okay, if that's how I can make my money, then why not? So I stayed illegal. I was working from 2017 to 2018. Then I found a Nigerian girl whom we decided to stay together. So we gave birth in 2020. I was still living my life. Like, everything was going on money. I was getting money. So during 2022, I was there. I closed from work. I was just there watching television. Then I had a sharp pain through my intestines. I was like, what is this? Before I was thinking it's just normal something. So the next day, the thing was like I couldn't even go to work. So I have to visit the hospital. I went to the hospital. They checked, blah blah blah. They said, "Nah, you're okay. There's nothing wrong with you. You'll be okay." But immediately I came back home. The next day, they rushed me to emergency because it was very like someone was slicing my intestine with knife. So they rushed me to the emergency. I spent like 30 minutes. Then the bill was like, because I was illegal, I was not having any insurance, so I have to pay everything from my pocket. So I paid, I came back. 2 weeks, it came back again. So it got to a time I wasn't myself, I couldn't do anything again. So then one doctor, Doctors Without Borders, I met one and he was like, oh, okay. He went to Afghanistan, all those places to do surgery for people that got wounded in the war, blah, 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 blah. So he can help me out. So he did a whole lot of checks, and then I eat, but whenever I eat, food is not coming out. So I was not eating. The food was stuck. So the doctor was like, I have a problem with my colon. That if care is not taken, I can lose my colon, then it will affect my small intestines. So he advised me that it's better we take the entire colon off. Then they will connect the small intestines to the rectum direct. If not, I'm not going to survive this, I'll die. So I love my children, I love my family, I don't want to die and leave them behind. So I agreed. Before they did what we called, maybe medical doctors are here, they know, maybe you know this, they did what we call stoma. Stoma. So the stoma, this is how it works, like they punch part of your skin, then they will connect everything. The waste will come from the side of your skin into a bag. That's like, they did that for me and it was uncomfortable at all. So I went to the doctor again. Now, doctor, I don't like this. I'm a young boy. I have to live my life. I can't be going around with this thing hanging. Then the doctor was, okay, then we will do what I told you is good. So I agreed, I signed documents, and then they took me in. It's supposed to take like 5 hours. It was a major operation, so it was supposed to take like 5 hours, but it took 8 hours. Then after everything, when I came back, I was like, my body was full of cables, whatever. I was like, whoa. So I stayed in the hospital for about 3 months for me to recover. After my recovery, I came back home. My wife was also carrying a second baby. She was not working, no money. The struggle was intense. So a church came to my aid, and then they supported me throughout my recovery, then other things. So after my recovery, I was like, no, I'm a man. I still need to work and feed my family. I don't want the church to be taking responsibility for me. So I went back, then I started working as illegal again. Unfortunately for me, I worked like 1 month. Then I got arrested. Then I explained everything, but they said, no, you're illegal. The fact that your medical condition it doesn't. So myself, I was very tired of living in Korea. So I agreed, I signed documents. Then I told my family that it's good. Because the doctor told me that this is it. Your bacteria, as African, when I was growing up, the things that we eat is different from the things that the Koreans eat. So this is what the doctor told me, that your bacteria that breaks down the food when you eat is different. So this food that you're eating here, the bacteria don't recognize the food. to break it down has become a problem. So it's better. So with that thought, I was like, okay, it's better I go to Africa, eat what I was brought up of. I came to Africa last year, and God being so good, I've been living the best of my life. Because now I eat and nothing happens. I'm very strong now. So this has been my story. Thanks for sharing. Love you guys.
Thank you, Nightingale. That was brilliant. Thank you for sharing that story. A very brave journey to bring us on. I would like to welcome Paula to the floor next. Is Paula here? Paula or Paula? Amazing. Paula, the floor is yours. Give it up for Paula, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so when I go here, I was actually asking myself why I signed up for this. So I saw the ad on Facebook, and I recently got into content creation for my auntie. She has a charity organization, that's another story. So she's trying to push me to do more things, and sorry. So she's been trying to push me out of my shell. I really like my shell. I'm really comfortable with it. But at the same time, I'm one who hates fear. I hate feeling afraid. I hate feeling like small. I hate feeling like I can't do anything. So sometimes I sign up for things or challenges that I don't even think about. I just dive into it. So I just actually saw the theme, Culture Connects. And I was wondering how it ties with my story. I'd already written my story a long time. My story is about myself, my life. I've had a complex life. My mom and my dad were never married. My mom is Methodist, my dad is Catholic. I was baptized in a Catholic church. This year I was actually confirmed in a Methodist church. My uncle had a whole issue about it because you're a Catholic. Why are you being confirmed in a Methodist church? But my thing is, why should labels matter? Why should Methodist and then Catholic matter if you actually believe in the one you are serving and you know what you are about? So I've had this kind of rifts in the family on my mom's side and my dad's side because they never actually saw eye to even get married. And it actually affected our relationship between me and my brother. We are still building our relationship. I'm older than him, but he acts like he's older than me. And I've given him his space because the African setting and the cultural setting, you are supposed to be like that. Respect your elders, but no, you give everybody their space to be who they want to be. To allow them to be whoever they want to be, allow them to do whatever they want to do. So when sometimes we buff heads, I don't take it personal. But in me, I really want to beat him up. That's another thing. But I've given him a space because I knew the family in which we grew up in. It wasn't easy. I don't even have a real definition of love or intimacy. So as I'm growing, I am building my own connections with my family and friends and redefining how I see everything now. I'm grateful for how I grew up because it gave me that space to be selfish. I think most of the time when you're raised in an African family, you have to look out for everyone. Sometimes you don't even have to look out. You're not even given the space to be selfish because it's a family. So where I grew up in and how I was, whatever I went through, now I'm really selfish. Even when I was getting here, I was reflecting on something I went through with my uncle. It's something I don't see reasonable, but he sees that as reasonable. So I told my mom that after this, I think I'm going to cut him off because I don't get why you tell me to look out for something in a partner or like relationships, but you don't live up to that standard. So I actually wrote a story down with when I saw the theme, so I just want to read it out to everyone here. So that's my story. I grew up in two homes, two of everything, two parents, two faith, two different worlds trying to raise one girl and her young, strong-haired brother. Two headstrong siblings in the midst of chaos, actually. My mom was Methodist, my dad Catholic. And somewhere in between those hymns and rosaries, I learned early that identity isn't always one thing. It's many, it's messy, it's layered. I was born Ashanti, but I barely know anything about my culture. My mom's father was Fanti, but she too never really got to live her culture fully. Oh, I forgot to tell you, my dad died. He died 10 years ago from ALS, so that's another thing. So it's like I inherited this quiet disconnection, a family that loves deeply, but not necessarily closely. I didn't grow up with strong extended family bonds. There wasn't that deep intimacy you see in others. And because of that, I learned to make peace with solitude. I learned to know myself deeply, what I like, what I don't, what I tolerate, and what I want. Sometimes that made me selfish, because when something doesn't serve me, I let it go. I tell myself I could have lived without you anyway, but I'm learning. Growth doesn't come from only comfort. It comes from friction, from vulnerability, from showing up when it's uncomfortable. Sorry, does anyone have a tissue? Okay. So I'm learning to hold space for both my peace and my growth, my isolation and my connection. Because my story isn't just what I have been born into, it's what I am becoming. I have realized something. Nobody's story is like mine. No one's story can be mine. It's a gift. This life, this unfolding. And I get to write it, shape it, and live it. Most of my family lives abroad. They come for Christmas around my birthday, actually. And that coincidence means a lot to me. It's like a reminder that even in distance, there's always alignment somewhere, somehow. And so my story is one that is still unveiling, still unraveling, and I have learned to be okay with that. To be friends with time, because time isn't running out. Time is waiting for me to create new experiences, to grow, to feel, to be. I have been afraid of it. I've never been afraid of a challenge. I dive right into it, sometimes without even thinking, because I like complexity. I like situations that stretch me, that make me question, break, rebuild, and rise again. And even when it bites back, I still come back for more, because that's where I find clarity, understanding, and growth. For a long time, I played small. Even though I always knew what I was meant to be was big, my voice is loud, my ideas are bold, my spirit is loud, but the spaces I hold myself in keep trying to shrink me, to make me question my lights. Maybe it's ironic, because Paula actually means little. I have decided if I'm little, it's only in size, not in purpose. I am little in frame, but large in frame. So now, I no longer wait for understanding to feel seen. I've given myself permission to be seen anyway. This year, I have been saying yes to things that scare me, to spaces that stretch me, to moments that make me confront myself. It feels like isolation sometimes, like standing in a crowd and sometimes being alone. I have learned that I am still home to myself. And that's my story right now, reclaiming my voice, my space, and my light. I don't care if you see me as weird, because I am fully living. And when I die, I will live as a cloud of joy and chaos and peace, because I have lived. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. That was an excellent story and a beautiful piece to close with. Thank you so much for sharing a very personal piece as well. We have Mariam next. If everyone can give Mariam a warm welcome, round of applause as she makes her way up to the stage.
Thank you. Sorry, I was going to be really uncomfortable if I just sat with a dress on. So my name is Miriam, and this is my story about connection. The day she converted me from fat 7-year-old with an overbite and gapped front teeth into the model I wanted to be. Faith wore a hot, peppery orange lipstick. On Faith's skin, which was like Fashion Fair's ebony brown, a chocolate brown with red undertones per the company, that color was bold, even for the 80s. It could arrest passersby, command their respect, banish old adages about black women, monkeys, and red lipsticks into forgetfulness. Before she walked in with hair so long and full of body, I imagined the relaxer ads in ebony had cut themselves out and puffed themselves up with helium. I don't think Faith had ever entered our little church way out by unused farmland that would sprout into suburbs by the time I reached adulthood. But the congregation was proud of her, even if we could claim her only by proxy. Her father remarried and began attending church with his new wife when Faith was already grown, living in New York as a professional model. But the church ladies nodded, applauded, said amen when it was announced Faith would lead the style show. She was ours. When Faith arrived, she lived up to how we had imagined a black Kentucky girl who had made it in the big city would be. Elegant, precise, demanding, and humble. She showed us how to walk the runway, how to stop at each end of the capital T that made up the center aisle and space before the altar, then turn and pose. She helped us write descriptions of the clothes we would model so the announcer could add sizzle to the show. My final piece was a winter coat in fuchsia, kind of this color, and a wool scarf and gloves set in teal. The scarf ended with a heavy knotted ball and strings of fringe. The coat was average 1987 puffy, its lining pillowy, its hood unadorned, but that color made it stylish. Between sets, the women and girls walking in the show, models, Faith called us, changed in a room in the church's basement. As I removed my coat from its hanger, one of the grown models said, "What a lovely coat." "I know," I purred, extending no too long as I smiled and caressed the coat's lapel. A nanosecond of silence, I blinked, shook my home training back into myself, corrected, "Too late, I mean thank you." My mother, in the room to help me change, covered her face as howls and echoes of "I know" filled the room. I had spoken as if possessed by Sandra Clark, and up the stairs she fled from me, cast out by the me who knew no other girls who shopped in the Pretty Plus section, the girl unsure she matched a coat so lovely, uncertain her turns could adequately express its glamour. Photos showed that girl walking with shoulders closer to her ears than the coat's puffiness can account for. Faith was unswayed. She wanted me to lead the closing of the show when all the models walked the runway single file in the last item they wore, circle back, and either line up single file or form two lines and part for the designer. In lieu of a designer, our show would make room for Faith. This was unrehearsed, a change from the original plan, something I was unprepared for, and the responsibility of which, leading my teenage cousins and grown women in the right direction without falling, overwhelmed 7-year-old me. Downstairs in the dressing room, gasping for breath and near tears, I told Faith, I can't do it. Faith grasped my shoulders, then turned my chin up to face hers. Miriam, yes, you can. I wouldn't have asked you to if I didn't think you could do it. Anger, exasperation, and disappointment were absent from her kind eyes. Her words were firm and indisputable out of those fiery lips. She knew, my 40s tell me now, that I had misheard the women downstairs, misread my mother's palm, mistaken encouragement of audacity, delight in innocence as chastisement. For what is more entertaining than a black girl so confident, so underexposed to the world, she knows no better than to be authentically herself. Faith saw a black girl who needed a model to affirm what she dreamed for herself, to edify the beauty and boldness even a grown black fashion model knew would be constantly attacked. I believed Faith. I walked that closing in my fuchsia coat and with my shoulders back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariam. That was an excellent story. Beautiful. Thank you so much for reading it to the room. That was absolutely gorgeous and a privilege to listen to as well. We have one speaker left on our roster, but I just wanted to make sure, is anyone here in attendance that thinks that they're speaking or would like to speak? Because now is your time to say it before I call our final speaker to the floor. Yes? Fantastic. So we might actually welcome you to speak first, and then I'll welcome our final speaker if you'd like to come up. Can you introduce your name to the audience as well when you get up and speak? Everyone, give her a massive boot of us as she makes her way up here. That's a very brave thing to do.
What did I just do? I should. Okay, hi, my name is I'm Rosina, I'm Nayele, I'm a Ghana girl, and I came to see my friend Anita, and I've been enjoying the whole experience because every story makes me realize that we are all on different journeys, and some might look like it's the same, some might not, but yep, I think connectivity for me, and I shared this with Anita this week, I think I had one of those profound moments where I was looking on Instagram and I saw a post that was talking about kindness and being kind to yourself. And I did ask myself, am I kind to myself? And I just went on with my life. I didn't even wait to answer, but a few minutes after, from wherever, I don't even know, a wave of emotions just hit me, and I started crying like a baby, seriously, in my kitchen. And I was like, I'm not really that kind to myself. I'm kind to maybe my neighbors, maybe my customers. I have a Kilowilly business, so my customers. I'm trying to be nice to people, but girl, you have been through a lot. I have gone through heartbreaks, I've gone through times where my mind won't shut up and I feel like I'm losing it, and I get back to meditation and I'm okay. I've gone through times where I'm like, if you're doing business in Ghana, you can understand this. You are the superwoman and you're making it, and the next moment you're like, maybe I should have just gone to the States and lived my life. But everything in all these parts of my journey I have never for a moment stopped to hug myself or to even pat myself or to even say, girl, you have survived and you will survive. And so I think that wave of emotions was coming from a place of, I have survived a lot of things. And I don't know the plot twist because it looks like there's going to be more. You think you've overcome this and then something else come. And it's like, I never prepared for this, but you still move. And so for me, as I kept listening, I was just trying to connect with myself because that's the most important thing in this world. You cannot, if you fall apart, like I always say, if you fall apart, the person you're trying to save, your wife, your children, everybody else will not be there. And because you fell apart and you have to be there for them. So I wrote a piece. I didn't even know it would come to this for me to share it, but I just want to read it out, if you would allow me. So I love to journal because it's very cathartic. It helps release certain emotions and certain thoughts that you might not be able to share with people because you think they'll feel like you're very stupid or you're crazy. But I find journaling and coloring kind of like my happy place. So there was one time that I remember I was just journaling and I wrote something I want to share. So it's titled, "What if life is not meant to make sense?" And I'm going to read it. Okay, what if life is not meant to make sense, but it's for us to live and enjoy as it comes? The experiences, disappointment, pain and struggles, joy and peace, chaos and craziness are all part of one big moment called life. And we get to unravel each moment piece by piece, embracing it as we flow and grow. What if life is not meant to make sense as we are trying so hard to make sense out of it? And that's driving us nuts each time. We are supposed to allow our fears to wash over us and not resist us. Embrace the darkest part as much as we embrace the light, seeking to be as truthful and honest with ourselves and with anyone and anything we find. What if life is not meant to make sense and we beat ourselves every day trying hard to make sense out of it? The shackles of our life are not supposed to keep us down, but to show us what it feels like to be victorious once we escape them. When we decide not to fight anymore, but go with the flow of the universal plan, purpose, and timing for our lives. What if life is not meant to make sense and we are here for a short amount of time? Not to make sense out of it, but to live, to wake up each day not knowing what to expect, yet feeling confident that we are doing what we are meant to be doing, becoming who we are supposed to become in order to challenge the status quo, to allow our soul to feel the surface of this earth through our body and mind experiences. Breathe, eat, love, share, cry, to feel all these emotions that we know and the ones we don't even know yet we feel them and they scare us because we can't name them. What if life is not meant to make sense? Would you now take a moment to breathe and look around to feel and see? Would you take a bite of that food with intent? Would you hug someone even if you don't understand or like them? Would you choose to live your life by the minute, knowing for sure that someday all of this will be a memory and you may not even be here anymore? Thank you.
Thank you, Rosina. That was absolutely gorgeous. And I love the fact that you did that improvised. That's very brave, and you did an absolute justice to yourself, so thank you so much for getting up on a whim. Just before our final speaker gets up, I had a very good or a very bad friend nominate his friend to speak. So if everyone can welcome Iwabana, I believe was their name. If you'd like to come up and share your story before our final speaker, Dr. Sarah, shares her story, that would be wonderful. Everyone give it up to Iwabana as she makes her way up here. I can give you a hand up onto the stage as well if you like. Here you are. There you go. Well done, you're very brave.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Solveig, but I usually tell people I'm Irapna because it's easier for Ghanaians to pronounce that. Okay, so I'll just give you a quick background of my name, then we can proceed. So my name is a Norwegian name. It means sunshine, so hi. Yeah, I grew up very, very introverted, but I realized that I had a very good niche for creativity. So I paint, I draw, I write, I sing, I do everything creative. I cook, right? And one day in high school, I decided that it's about time I express these things because nobody would recognize you if you don't put yourself out there. So I joined the Writers and Debaters Club in school. And also I was in the art club because I used to create designs for the school, create designs for my house. So long story short, I ended up becoming the vice president for Writers and Debaters Club in school. Then from there, my writing died. I went to university to pursue textile design, and once in a while, I would also do like some art commissions for people, right? But late last year, I was sitting down and I was thinking, I was like, it's actually been a while since I wrote anything, you know, because I stopped writing. I was just focusing on my art and trying to build my portfolio and all of that. Then I made that radical decision to start writing. So I told myself, I gave myself a challenge. I told myself that by the end of every month, I should have put out like a full article on Substack. I don't care where the inspiration is going to come from. I will make sure I put it out there. And I realized something that very, very typically for creatives, we like to be in a free expression. We don't like to be, what's the word? We don't like to be coerced or put in a box. We just want to be bubbly and all over the place. But I realized that with a little bit of structure, it helps you go further in your creative expression. So my very first article I wrote it on Substack, and I really wasn't expecting so much engagement from it. But I would like to share a few lines, if you don't mind. Okay. So the title is Journaling, a tool to manifest the mind's voice. Everyone has a stream of constant thoughts and ideas that come to mind daily. When compiled and not let out, these thoughts can be like a bottle of carbonated water subjected to pressure. The outcome is not so pleasant, as it results in the spillage of the bottle's content due to rigorous agitation and the inability of the bottle to withstand pressure. This is the same for the human mind. The human mind is for creating. That is a term we hear more often than not, and I stand to second this. The mind is powerful and designed to execute many tasks involving creativity, innovation, information retention, and analysis. But when overwhelmed and under pressure, it can start to malfunction like a worn-out electrical appliance. Journaling is a practice that helps us document our thoughts, keep track of ideas, plans, goals, and emotions. It serves as a stress relief for an overwhelmed mind and brings to light certain aspects of ourselves that are hidden from us. Thus, an instrument for voicing out our thoughts, providing room for more creative thinking. I started the practice of writing down ingredients on a tiny sheet of paper
to recall what I needed to get when grocery shopping. This simple act grew into creating a to-do list on sticky notes and eventually writing about how my day went in a diary or journal. Unbeknown to me, this made me a better planner and helped me visualize what tasks I needed to complete in a day. And it also created room for me to self-analyze my train of emotions and experiences. I also noticed that the psychological impact journaling had on me. Take, for instance, a very stressful day, and you find the time to sit and document what you went through. Writing about that stressful day helps you to vent out on paper and recap the interactions and experiences you encountered. This causes you to trace the instances that triggered certain reactions from you and expand your perspectives on a situation. It also stimulates mindfulness as it makes you more present and more aware of your feelings. After successfully documenting all of that, you feel lighter and much better about yourself, relieving you of the pressure of overthinking. Now, you may wonder how I came about these takes and realizations. The answer is as evident as it can be, through journaling. If we can create a device that voices out what goes on in our minds, people will be startled at the rate at which thoughts spiral in the minds of others and themselves. Unfortunately, technology has not advanced to that level, but is definitely achievable. Even without such technology, humans find ways of voicing out their thoughts through small talks, discussions with friends or peers, podcasts, open forum discussions, debates, storytelling, and writing. In my bid to encourage the culture of journaling, I developed the habit of gifting my friends journals or diaries, or urging them through discussions to write down their thoughts whenever they have the time. The beauty of journaling is that it has no restrictions, and it provides you a free rein to express your thoughts without judgment. It is also a practice that tracks your progress in life, and it can be a perfect tool for therapy and self-healing. The more you immerse yourself in it, the more you create interesting and fun ways of documenting your life. It can be also a good medium to write down memory lane. It can also be a good medium to go down memory lane as you progress in life. So, don't hesitate to grab a book and write down your thoughts. Perhaps you can write about how you feel about the weather or why you love traveling. You can write about your experience at that fancy restaurant or how bored you are at home on a Sunday morning. You can even write about why you think the sky is blue or plan for the next academic year. Delve into the art of journaling and discover the endless abilities your mind possesses. So this article marks my debut in publishing my writing and gives you, my readers, the opportunity to explore my interestingly bizarre mind. For more fun articles and reads, kindly subscribe to my page or newsletter. So if anyone is interested in subscribing to my Substack, I can give you my details. I have quite a number of interesting articles over there, and I'm currently working on like 5 different articles at the same time. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for getting up and sharing that webinar. And please do share your details with the guys when you're mingling after the session. I would like to welcome our final speaker this evening. If everyone can give a big, huge, massive applause to Dr. Sarah Dork-Badsey as she makes her way up to the stage. Doctor, do you want to come around this way?
Nice to see us all. Good evening. My name is Sarah Fafali Dogbaji. Many people know me as a storyteller because I tell stories. So I'm going to tell you the story of how I became a storyteller. 10 About 16 years ago, my 3-year-old son said to me, "Mama, tell me a story." And then I realized that I could not remember any of the Ghanaian folk tales that I participated in, storytelling sessions that I enjoyed. I couldn't remember any of them. And I didn't know what to do, because I could remember Beauty and the Beast, all those Little Red Riding Hood, I remember all of them, but I couldn't remember our folk tales. And you see, that came across to me as if my son was asking me to introduce him to the holdings of our ancestral archive. And I could not tell him that I've lost the key. That was going to be disastrous. So I lumped up bits and pieces of the stories that I could remember, and I told that to him. And then I took it upon myself to start collecting these stories that were once told, openly, but it's become an endangered art form. So I started collecting the stories. Community engagement, so people would know. I went to community, spoke to people, and then to start them telling their stories again. So I supported them a lot. And in the process, I documented the stories in audiovisual format. And as we speak, we have over 1,500 stories. We give thanks to God who grants ability. And so, yeah. I said to myself at one point, "Sarah, these stories you're documenting, when you go and put them in the archive, it will still not serve the purpose effectively." And so I began to tell or retell the stories by organizing storytelling events. And so if you happen to hear about do art, you have to come and listen to some more stories. But this evening, I am inspired to tell you a story that has made a strong impression on me since I started this journey. And I'm sure you will enjoy it. If you don't, please still pretend that So this is a story about the cat and the dog. You Ghanaians, we all know that cat and dogs are not friends, yes? In other spaces they are. But I'll tell you today why the cat and the dog are not friends here in Ghana. We bless God for what they do in other countries. And so, this cat and this dog were very close friends. They worked together very well, and they became very wealthy. And so they decided that they would get for them, each one of them would get a spouse, so that each one of them will have more than one head to discuss issues with. Brilliant idea. But they decided not to take these spouses from the communities in which they lived, because everybody knew they were wealthy and they didn't want people pretending to be something else in order to be connected to their wealth, not to themselves. And so they traveled for a very long time, and then they arrived in a community that everything seemed pleasant. And so they decided to look for spouses in that community. But you see, they arrived late in the evening, like now. And so they checked into an inn, or what probably we will call today Airbnb. And the room they were giving was next to the kitchen. And soup, delicious soup, had been prepared for the next morning. And the aroma of this soup was really something. It had laced everything together. And you know, everybody thinks the cat is the thief. So cat was very quiet though, didn't want himself into trouble. And they went to sleep. But dog kept tossing and turning. And then the cat said, Charlie, if you hear Charlie, you know you're in Ghana, right? Charlie, what are you doing? And the dog said, the room has become stuffy. I said, why? He said, let me open the window. He opened the window and more aroma came in. But cat fell asleep. And the dog decided to explore. Dog jumped through the window that he had opened, and then he tiptoed and found the kitchen and noticed the pot. And he went and looked in. And the soup looked better than it smelled. And he decided to taste the soup. So he dished for himself a taster. He tasted it and it did taste better than it looked and even better than it smelled. And so he decided now that he was hungry and wanted to buy soup, but the restaurant was closed. And so he was going to serve himself and pay later. That was the impression. He served himself, he drank it, and it tasted very good. And then he gave himself another helping, and it was good. And then a third helping, and it was really, really good. And then he jumped back in. When he went, his friend the cat was looking for him. Didn't know where he was. He had been. Said, Charlie, I've told you, where are you going? Where have you been? He said, the air was not coming inside. So I went outside to meet the air. And cat said, we are strangers here. Brother, be careful. He said, yeah, I have it under control. I know what I'm doing. And so cat went to sleep again. Dog kept going out to have some more soup. And then he finished drinking the soup. The whole pot was gone. The pot of soup was finished. And that is where he started thinking of the repercussions of his action. So what will people think? So he decided not to stay because he had embarrassed himself. And so he quickly left the town and went and hid behind a huge tree, the silk cotton tree. And at that time, it was already like 5 a.m., and the cat got up and found so many footprints on the windowsill, footprints of the dog on the windowsill. And then there was no aroma of soup anymore. So cat put 2 and 2 together, and he got 5. And so he decided to also leave, so he left through the door, not through the window. And when he got out, he looked at the footprints of the dog, and they were going in the direction of the kitchen. And he took the opposite direction. Of course, the footprints of the cat are, significantly different from the footprints of the dog. And so the cat decided to leave as well because he will be accused falsely come daybreak. When he got to the outskirts, the dog came out and asked, Charlie, are they mentioning my name? And the cat said, no one has mentioned your name, but you have left your footprints. This story made a very significant impression on me. Why? Because I started thinking, what footprints am I leaving as I walk this earth? I'm a member of faculty in the university. I started thinking, what footprints am I leaving with my students? What footprints am I leaving in my community? What footprints am I leaving in my family? What would people remember me for? What do people call me when I am not there? You know. So I started having this reflection because I came to the realization that my footprints can become my name. And this is a story about names. I was quite impressed with the previous speaker who began her story by what went on with her name, you know, and I felt confirmed that this is a good story to share. So I just want to tell you that I have been watching my footprints, including this evening's footprints, because people will remember me, not by my name, but by my footprints. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic. One more, please. Please.
There's one topical issue in our country now, which is what? Thank you. It's called galamsey. The issue. How did you all come to know that it really is an issue? I'll tell you. 3 men decided that they were looking for death to eliminate him because they were tired of burying their own. And so they armed themselves to the teeth, as they say in English expressions. And they left. They checked the whole town, every corner. They didn't find death. So they went into the nearby forest and started searching. They searched and searched. They didn't find death, but they found an old man. And the old man asked them, "Sons, where are you going, so very well armed?" He said, "We are looking for death. If you are death, tell us so that we kill you." He said, "Oh no, I am not death. But on my way here, I saw a sack, a very strange sack down the path, on the side of the path. And it was tied in a very strange way. So maybe it is death hiding in that sack. So please, check it out." And he went his way. The 3 young men went to the sack and they opened it, and what did they find? What did they find? Gold. The sack was full of gold. Immediately they dropped their arms. Hey, dear, hey. And the focus on searching for death shifted. The focus now was on gold. And they decided to share the gold. But first of all, we've been on this journey for 2,362 years. Yeah. You were the king's daughter, I believe. You were the one who gave them water on their way, isn't it? Yeah, I remember. She was there. And you see, they decided to share the gold, but before sharing the gold, they thought, after this long search without food and we had run out of water, why don't we just go to the next town and buy ourselves, a good lunch and some drinks, maybe asana, maybe brukutu, and refreshing ourselves before we continue to share this booty that we have found. It was a great idea. So they sent one of them to go and get, I think, wache or gobe. Gobe. That's rice and gari and beans with fried plantain and egg and with red oil. Gobe. So he went. When he was going on his own, he started thinking, it would be a great thing to have all this gold to myself, yeah? So what should I do? Why don't I lace this food with some rat poison? So he bought not only the gobe, but he bought also, what do they call it? Kwakwela stop. That's the one I was looking for. He also bought Kwakwela stop and put it in the food and gave it and returned with the food and water gladly. Whilst he was away, his two friends also started thinking, don't you think it would be a good idea to share this booty into two, among two people instead of three? We will have more. Let us prepare. When he comes, let's stone him to death. We'll eat the food, and then we will take the gold. And so they did. The young man appeared gallantly, holding the laced food. He didn't know that the other party had also planned for him. As soon as he arrived, they stoned him to death. Whilst he was in the process of dying, they sat down to eat the food, watching him die. And they ate and drank. In no time, they also started manifesting symptoms of dying. And so the old man came back on his way back and saw the three men at various stages of dying. All die if you die, Charlie. And so he asked them, my sons, you said that you were looking for death. Has he found you? They were in such a state that they could not respond. But I learned a good lesson. As you're planning evil for somebody, know that it is also being planned for you. Number 2, don't get too addicted. I'm not sure addicted is the word. Too passionate. Too, give me the word. Obsessed, that's the word. Hello to Brofo. Don't get too obsessed with GOLD, gold. Do not, I learned, not to be too greedy, because greediness is bedfellows with death. That is also something I learned in the various stories that I have collected. Thank you very much.
I could listen to you all day. Thank you. It was incredible. Give it up for Dr. Sarah Doyle-Ramsey and everybody. I can safely speak on behalf of everyone in this courtyard and say that we could listen to you all night until next week. But that does bring Seanchoiche to a close, and I would like to give a huge thank you to so many people in the coming together of this event. Again, I'd like to reiterate my thank you to Culture Ireland and the Embassy of Ireland in Nigeria and Ghana for having me here in Ghana to host Seanchoiche here at PGA Festival. And I'd also like to give a massive thank you to everyone at PGA Festival for having us here to host this storytelling event for the very first time in Accra. I want to give a huge, huge round of applause to everyone that's organising this festival. But most importantly, I would like to give a huge thank you to our storytellers, our Seanchoiche, who've come in and shared their stories this evening. As your stories have epitomised the complete nature of what Seanchoiche is all about, It's all about people coming together and listening to others, strangers and loved ones, share stories ranging from their personal journeys, their personal trains of thought, their experiences, folklore, fictional tales, and that was what we saw. That is really what we saw tonight. It was a total symphony of stories coming together around the theme of connection at an event and at a festival that is dedicated so much to the spoken and written word. So thank you so much for doing such a tremendous job, each and every one of you storytellers. You've been absolutely incredible. Gurv Mina Mahagav Chgalere, guys. Thank you so much, as we say in Irish, for having a few minutes today to share your stories, and equally to everyone here in the audience, thank you so much for dedicating the past 2 hours to listening to the stories of those who spoke this evening. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the festival. Gurv Mina Mahagav. Thank you.